George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Liberté, égalité, and fraternity. The French Revolution goes into reverse. Little Macron performs a coup d'etat over the French elections, which you may recall took place 49 days ago. And he kidnaps one of the world's biggest businessmen, the owner and founder of the Telegram network, issuing an arrest warrant after the man's plane had already taken off en route to Paris. That's called a kidnap, either in French or in English. And the sight of a man and his 7-month pregnant wife, 7 months pregnant wife, let me say it again, being hung by the neck until death by Israeli occupiers is worsened only by the horrific scenes at the AlAqsaHospital in the Gaza Strip. And has the Middle East war begun in earnest? Or was the Hezbollah response to the killing of their deputy commander merely for show? I suppose we'll know when the Iranian response arrives, tonight or tomorrow, or maybe the next day. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
If that's all there is, then the Hezbollah response to the murder of Shukr, their deputy commander, is mere artifice. If that's all there is, 340 drones instead of 3,000 ballistic missiles as frequently trailed, then Israel will definitely be able to live with that. And the early signs are that they are prepared to do so. The leader of Hezbollah, Said Hassan Nasrallah, has said that they will decide whether to attack again once they see how the attack today took place, if it was successful or not. We'll never know that from the Israeli side because they have imposed an almost blanket military censorship over any footage of any damage done by the 340 Hezbollah drones. But it's not likely that the damage was to civilian areas. It's not likely that the damage got more than 10 kilometers away from Tel Aviv. It's not likely that anything hit the most strategic of Israeli targets, which calls into question whether or not there was a negotiated end to this front. Not an end to the front altogether, because Hezbollah have promised to fire on Israel every day, because their overarching goal is the liberation of Palestine, the relief of the people of Gaza. But it may very well be that there has been a coordinated end to the particular casus belli of the murder of Mr. Shukr in Beirut. We'll know when we see the response from the other 2 or maybe 3 participants in the Axis who have promised to respond to the ongoing crimes and atrocities of the Israeli government. The first of those is quite likely to be from Yemen. Yemen, which defeated the US Navy, the US Navy's words, not mine, and which has got the EU and the UK navies all tied up with nowhere to go in the Red Sea, may very well have a determination greater than that shown by Hezbollah earlier today. It may very well be that the main retaliation comes from Yemen. Yemen have promised that they are cocked and ready to fire, and we'll see what happens next. But the big enchilada, of course, as always, is Iran. Iran have promised so many times that the clock is ticking, that the engines are burning, that the propellers are turning, that it would be a major, major loss of face for Iran if its response was not of a significantly more important order than that Hezbollah delivered today. And I still expect that to happen. Or there may have been behind the scenes all kinds of promises made and negotiations haggled over that neither you nor I know about. But we will know when we see the targets, when we see the quality, when we see the quantity of the ordnance that lands on Netanyahu's head in the next 24, 48, 72 hours or so. If we're lucky, there'll be no broader Middle East war. If we're lucky, the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, which now sits just off Iran, will not be used. If we're lucky, the Marines will not land on the beach in Beirut. If we're lucky, the balloon will not go up and World War III will not take place in the Middle East, at least. Indeed, it has become very much more likely that that balloon will go up in the Ukraine. In the Ukraine proxy conflict between NATO and the Russian Federation. And I'll be turning at some length to that over the course of the show this evening with one of the most important English-speaking guests available in Russia by a country mile. Che Bose, the Irish man who knows everything there is to know about what's going on at the front and what's going on in the Kremlin. So let me move to France. I don't mean actually move to France. If I was ever thinking of doing that, then today's events are a salutary reminder that that would be a bad idea. First of all, Macron has carried out a coup against the French Republic, a coup against the French Constitution. There were elections in France 49 days ago, called by Macron, deliberately before the Olympic Games, in which he asked for an Olympic truce. He called those elections after the severe drubbing that his party received from the National Front leader, Marine Le Pen. He thought that the French would rally behind him, but they did not. Macron came last in the elections. He came third in the elections. Le Pen second. And my friend Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his Popular Front came first. Albeit it's a broad front, and albeit it's not any single party victory. But it's a very clear majority that now exists in the French Assembly Nationale to form a government, which according to the French Constitution must now happen. But Macron first demanded that no government, including any of Mélenchon's party, could be tolerated by him because, he said, they're anti-Semites. Their hatred of Israel, their support for the Palestinian people has been twisted, mutated into that foul allegation that we know in Britain oh so well. He will not accept any of Mélenchon's ministers, and therefore he cannot agree to form a government based on the parliamentary majority elected 49 days ago. So Mélenchon wrong-footed him. He announced, that's fine, none of my party will be ministers in the new Popular Front government. Now go ahead and implement your constitutional Republican presidential duties. And Macron has again refused. This means that the French people have been tricked. This means that the French people have been fooled by a president almost bereft of political support in the country. There are many places in the world where it would be safe for a would-be dictator, a little Napoleon, many places where it would be safe to do that. But France is not one of them. The French people are not among the world's fools. The French people know how to rid themselves of tyranny. They have done it many times before with bloody and gory effect. And so the clock is now ticking in France as to what the French people's response will be to the flagrant abuse of power that little Macron has now carried out. But that wasn't the only crime that was committed in France today. The hijacking of a private plane carrying the owner of Telegram, the founder and owner, one of the world's richest and most powerful businessmen, the hijacking of his plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport would have done any terrorist group in the world proud. It was a perfectly executed hit. It was the issuing of an arrest warrant for someone headed for France after they had taken off headed for France, merely for refueling. And it was a deliberate attempt to swarm the airfield and seize the owner of Telegram on the tarmac, on the steps. And that's what they have done. They say that it's because on Telegram there are far too many child sexual abuse pictures, groups, and chat. But that's a lie, because Telegram is not even in the top 8 of the main platforms in the world where such content is to be found by the depraved. In fact, Instagram and Facebook, both owned by Zuckerberg, are leagues ahead of the rest of the pack of places where you can find such obscenity, such wickedness. There are 8 at least ahead of Telegram in those grisly stakes. It's said that on Telegram you can buy hard drugs. Well, you can buy hard drugs in many places, I'm reliably told. The idea that you would seize the owner of Telegram because some people have bought hard drugs on a platform that he founded and makes available to the public is a pretty big stretch. The real reason they seized him was because of the worldwide, Western worldwide elimination, man by man, platform by platform, of dissenting voices or voices who will not collaborate with those cracking down on the dissenting voices. One after another, they came for TikTok, and I did not protest because I was not 12 years old. They forced TikTok to be sold to American billionaires. They stole it from its owners. They shanghaied its Chinese owners into selling the platform to them. Not because of 12-year-old girls improperly clad, dancing improperly on TikTok videos, but because they knew the reach and power of TikTok was such that any political messaging that began to gain track on that platform was a problem for them. That's why the European Union is threatening Elon Musk with dire sanctions, and after what's happened to the Telegram boss, I strongly advise Elon Musk not to come to Europe, even to the court hearing he has with me in September in Dublin. Don't come, Elon. I've been asking you to come, but don't come now, because you cannot be sure that you will not meet the same fate. They have arrested journalists, some of them distinguished diplomats, like our friend Craig Murray, the Honourable former Ambassador for Britain in Uzbekistan, like Kit Klarenberg, having to base himself outside of Britain freely to practice the free speech that the British always claimed was their leitmotif, if you'll forgive the French. They arrested, the FBI swooped on Scott Ritter and took away all his devices. And our very own Richard Medhurst, as you saw on our program the other day, was treated like a terrorist, arrested under Section 12, first time anyone's been arrested, under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. The others were arrested under Section 7. Section 12 is much more serious. He was handcuffed. He was arrested in front of the other passengers on his arriving flight at Heathrow. He was held incommunicado. No one, not his parents, not his lawyer, not his hosts, at an open air conference taking place in the south of England. Nobody knew if Richard Medhurst was alive or dead, if he'd been kidnapped, and if so, by whom. But he was kidnapped, all right, but by the British state under bogus application of Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. One by one, man by man, woman by woman, platform by platform, they are preparing tyranny and dictatorship in the Western world. And there's a reason for it. And that reason is that they are preparing for all-out war with the Russian Federation. I picked up a book in Waterstones the other day by a woman who should know, and I'll show you the book later in the program. It is the nearest thing you're going to get before the blast as a picture of what will happen if this war that we are involved in with Russia turns nuclear. You'd be well to read it fast, because it may be coming our way very much quicker than we expected. The threat by Zelensky today to fire NATO-supplied rockets at St. Petersburg and at Moscow is a threat which can only be described as a harbinger of World War III. If NATO weapons rain down on Moscow and on St. Petersburg, with some of the Western governments pretending they never authorized that, but the British government up to its neck in that, then there's no holds barred. There wouldn't just be pressure on Putin to step up the war. There would be an irresistible force brought to bear on him to activate Russia's nuclear protocols, which are plainly, shortly, any existential threat to the existence of the Russian Federation, allows a first use of nuclear weapons by the Russian armed forces. And firing on the capital and on the former capital of Russia with NATO weapons very definitely constitutes that. The madcap invasion of Kursk by Zelensky has failed. 5,000 more young and old Ukrainian men and women have lost their lives in a public relations stunt. The forces that invaded Russia have been surrounded, crushed, destroyed. The German tanks that rolled into Kursk for the first time since the Red Army's victory in 1943, which turned the tide of the Second World War exactly at Kursk, have been destroyed. 24 German Leopard Panzers entered Russia in 2024. 20 of them have already been destroyed. But the wreckage will not be confined to the province of Kursk. It is now ineluctable that the maximum war aims of Russia be prosecuted until success. The Donbass is practically completely liberated, but other places stand out like a sore thumb. The sorest of those is the most Russian of all cities, the city of Odessa. The sore thumb of hundreds of thousands of Russian people in Transnistria, stranded between a hostile NATO, nativist Romania and the dictatorship of Zelensky in Kiev, cannot be left surely marooned, only to be destroyed between these two revanchist forces. Transnistria will have to be liberated. Odessa will have to be liberated. The former idea of a negotiated settlement based on Russia keeping what it holds, Ukraine keeping what Russia doesn't hold, and remaining a naval power, remaining a power with access to the seaboard at Odessa, is surely now dead and buried. With the hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians and Russians who have all died for NATO, all died for Joe Biden and the succession of British prime ministers, all died for little soldier Schultz, all died for little Emperor Macron. No one will be able to forgive what's happening in Kursk, in Ukraine, what's happening at the AlAqsaHospital this evening, what's happening in the Khan Yunis refugee camps, in the tiny areas to which hundreds of thousands of defenseless refugees are cascading from one place to the other on a daily basis, starving, dying of thirst, and now dying of polio. The first confirmed 10-year-old child died from polio in Gaza yesterday. The polio spores will not be restricted to the Gaza Strip. The war in Ukraine will not be restricted to Ukraine. We're about to talk to a very important American guest about the dramatic developments in American politics this week. It's Kim Iversen coming up right after this.
Mr. President, we got a report of a 50-foot woman marauding through Washington, sir.
Thank you, Captain. But I'm looking for a shorter woman, one who likes to take long strolls in the park and yell at minorities.
She's not looking for a date. She's terrorizing the city.
Is there a difference? A little levity. Call in the military.
We are the military, sir.
Boy, we got here fast. We better do something, right?
Shall I scramble the jets, Mr. President?
No thanks. I'll just take a muffin and some coffee.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, would you vote for Elon Musk as president? That might be the only way he can stay out of a European jail after all. Answer yes or no on my Telegram channel. Whilst the Telegram still exists, it's t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my Twitter whilst you can still get Twitter in the European Union and in the UK, you can vote on the YouTube community poll and on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please share with all of your contacts. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're heading fast to 500,000 subscribers, and we want to get there as quickly as possible. You can vote on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. Would you vote for Elon Musk as president? Yes or no? Big poll already. Almost 25,000 people have voted, and I've only just announced it. You can call the show. It's toll-free in the US and Canada. +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the UK and Ireland. 0808 196 5522. And the number for the rest of the world is 44203 966 2625. Kim Iversen is the host of the extremely influential Kim Iversen Show. She's been a very popular guest on the mother of all talk shows several times before, and I'm glad she's agreed to come back this evening because, Kim, it has been the most dramatic of weeks. The Democrat bubble was no sooner fully inflated at the end of their star-studded convention, although most of the stars didn't show up. That was just a ruse to make people watch. But no sooner was the bubble at its maximum, it was pricked by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., was it not? We've just lost Kim, not, I hope, permanent. But it was a dramatic week. When Robert F. Kennedy dropped out on Friday of the swing states, but not the election as a whole, he didn't dip out of the election as a whole, partly because he'd lose his Secret Service protection if he did. So he's still a presidential candidate, but Biden and Harris have withdrawn the security protection in any case. Although, as I've said here many times, I'm not sure a Kennedy wants an FBI, American deep state bodyguard in any case. But the appearance in Arizona of Kennedy alongside Trump was politics at its most dramatic. The warmth between these two men, the common ground between these two men, and the agreed unity platform between these two men changes the terms of trade in the American presidential election completely. There is no sentient person who can any longer pretend that the Trump platform is not by a league more radical than the Harris platform. Kennedy and Trump have agreed on three things: an end to the Ukraine war, health for the children of America, meaning a war on a big pharma, and an end to censorship, the kind of censorship I tried to warn you of in my monologue this evening. That's now the offer. An end to the war in Ukraine, an end to the war against free speech, and an end to the sickness of America's children, the sickest children on the planet. Actually, Kennedy made a powerful point today when he said the most profitable thing in the world today is a sick American child. They will feast on that child. Big Pharma will feast on that child for the rest of its life. Kim Iversen is back. I'm glad to say, Kim, I was just opining that the Democrat bubble burst in Arizona when Kennedy appeared on the platform with Donald Trump. What's your view?
I mean, it's incredible that he did it. I wasn't sure if he would. When I spoke to him when he first jumped into the race, we all know that he ran as a Democrat. He was not going to back down from that. I pressed him on that, even on my show, saying, why are you running as a Democrat? They do not like you. You shouldn't be running. They're not going to let you have a fair election. He did eventually, of course, go and run as an independent. I then thought he's got to join Trump once it became obvious that his campaign wasn't going to really, truly get him where he wanted to be, that the best option for him, if he wants to be president, in my view, was actually to join Trump as the VP. So to have actually a Trump-Kennedy ticket. But that ship sailed. Trump ended up picking Vance. I do think that he reached out to Kennedy at one point asking or kind of, putting the feelers out there if he'd be interested in VP. And I think Kennedy declined that. Not sure if Kennedy, if he would have expressed his interest, if he would have been selected anyway. But from my understanding, he declined that, only to then change his mind later and say, I think the best thing to do is to join Trump. And he's right. They agree on all of the major issues. They agree on, as you've mentioned, the Ukraine-Russia war. They agree on censorship. They agree on this lawfare that Democrats have taken out against both Trump and RFKJr, trying to get him kicked off the ballot everywhere. They agree on, even with the COVID pandemic, even though Trump was the one who pushed forward Operation Warp Speed, and he was the one that gave immunity to the big pharma companies, he wasn't for the lockdowns in the states. A lot of people try to pin it on Trump, but that was actually municipality by municipality. It just depended on where you lived. The governor or your mayor or county commissioner would actually close down your region. So it wasn't actually Trump who did that. So they agree, and they even agree, much to my chagrin, on Israel-Palestine. So they agree on all of the major points. It makes sense for those two to get together. And I think Democrats had the reaction we expected, which was, oh, look at Bobby Kennedy's just he's a bad Kennedy. He's a bad Democrat. We don't like him anyway. He's a conspiracy theorist. But he is ushering, I think, a lot of independent voters over to Trump. I'm seeing it on social media, people saying, well, if Kennedy thinks Trump's the right vote, then that's the vote that I was conflicted. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to vote for Kennedy. I don't like either candidate, but if he says Trump, I trust him. I'm going to go with Trump. So I think he has brought a lot of people over to the Trump side. And I think I think Trump is going to be very tough to beat come November, which we're getting really close to.
We are. Now, let's look at the numbers. I mean, Trump was by a short head in front of Harris anyway. Kennedy was on 5% nationally, which is a lot of votes when your country's as big as America, but higher than 5% in some of the important states that Trump will need to win. And if he does win, will win the presidency, whatever the national vote is. On the face of it, it looks like a game changer. Have the Democrats begun to reflect a fear of that?
I don't think so. I think they're going to keep playing the game that they've always played, and they're going to be confident thinking that that's going to get them the win. They're running, their entire platform is just, we're not Donald Trump. Donald Trump's bad. Kennedy's bad too. We don't like either of them. They're both crazy conspiracy theorist loons, and you should vote for us because we're the sane ones. I mean, they're still running on that. We've got now a candidate. I mean, this is just this is a really crazy race. What a time to be alive and watching this political system in the U.S. unfold, because it is just a crazy election season. You've got Harris, who nobody voted for. They anointed her into the spot after taking Joe Biden basically out to pasture. And then they put in Kamala Harris. No one's voted for her. She hasn't released a platform. She's not really giving interviews. She's not doing any debates. So they've just propped this person up and said, well, she's not Donald Trump, and you don't want Donald Trump. You want us. We're the good guys. And yet they're the ones who have brought in the censorship. They're the ones who are putting us on the brink of World War III with Russia, with a nuclear power. They're the ones who who locked down. They're all of the areas that locked down were all Democratic governors in the most Democrat blue states. So it was Democrats who were doing and then they have the gall to get up there on stage and talk about how Trump is going to take away their freedoms, that Trump is the one who targets journalists. It's been Democrats who've been doing this, and their fear-mongering and their desire to censor and control. They're the ones who carted Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger in front of Congress and called them so-called journalists. I mean, they're the ones who've done all of these things. They have absolutely no self-awareness. So I don't think that, this is I got to say, this is, and I'm sure you could feel my pain, this is a very difficult election because I absolutely disagree with Trump and RFKJr on Israel-Palestine. And that is, it's just obviously, it's how can you side with people who, in my view, are siding with a genocide? I can't do that. But at the same time, I also see that there are a lot of other big existential issues that we're facing with censorship and big pharma and the sick kids, as Kennedy was talking about, and the lawfare that and just the lack of democracy that the Democrats are ushering in. And that, having to weigh that out is torture, to be quite honest. It's torture to figure out which way do we go. I do think that Harris would be better on Palestine. I do. But that would be the only thing. That would be the only thing should be. And then you have to trade it out. You have to sit here and think as an American, which one would you rather have? Would you rather continue watching this slaughter of Gazans in Palestine and what they're doing to them in the West Bank? Or do you want world war with Russia? Take your pick, because that's what you're going to get when you choose. You have to decide which war is worse. Which war do you want to prevent more, I suppose? And that is just a really terrible situation. But at least we Americans can vote. The rest of you are just kind of at our mercy, which is seemingly, to me, very unfair, that the rest of the world is kind of just has to do whatever America wants because America controls the strings, and yet we're the only ones that get to vote.
Yeah, but we get to root for, in my case, for Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. I've been behind her for many years. And it's not, of course, an endorsement of Donald Trump to say that Biden, Harris suck, and that they are the ones who are actually doing all of the things they said a Trump presidency would bring. They said the world would go up in smoke if Donald Trump won again in 2020. They said that Donald Trump would be imprisoning his political opponents and the journalists. They said that the world situation would be perilous. And now, just 3.5 years later, we all know that it's the Democrats that have done all of that and very much more. So, on the principle that a stopped clock is right twice a day, we might as well try somebody else, would be my attitude, and I think might be the attitude of many. Besides, Kim, it's a bad time to be calling others conspiracy theorists, given that virtually all of the conspiracy theories that have been woven over the last 20 years have all begun to look more and more true with every day.
Isn't that true? It's interesting that you bring up Dr. Jill Stein. I love Dr. Jill Stein. She is just a genuine, first of all, principled person. Love that she's such a fierce fighter. Love that she's out there campaigning. She's also a really good person and a great person to have a conversation with. Jill Stein is my absolute favorite. I hate the Green Party, I'm not going to lie. I'm really against the Green Party because they are also, they tend to get into that controlling, the controlling side that the Democrats have. We want to censor, we want to force people to do mandates. They have that kind of attitude about them. But I love Dr. Jill Stein. What's interesting, so she's not backing out of the race. And what Kennedy, when he said he wanted to back out because he didn't want to be in only the swing states, right? As you mentioned, he doesn't want to be a spoiler in those swing states. And he believes that he would be a spoiler and it would hurt Donald Trump. What's interesting is Jill Stein will be a spoiler for Harris for sure. She will take a lot of those protesters that we're seeing outside of the DNC. A lot of those people will vote for Dr. Jill Stein because they in their hearts cannot in good conscience vote for somebody who is, to them, genocide is a red line, as it should be. So I do think what's interesting is that Jill Stein, I'm really curious to hear from her which one she would have to, if she had to choose, which we're going to have to, unfortunately, because as much as I'd love her to be president, she's just, the reality is the reality. If she had to choose between Trump and Harris, which one would she choose? Because she will act as a spoiler for Harris. And I almost think that I don't want to speak for her. I don't know. But I mean, if she's willing to be a spoiler for Harris, it will throw the election even more so for Trump, with Bobby then endorsing Trump, Stein staying in the race in these swing states. I don't see how Harris wins. I don't see it. But, they've been gaslighting us with these polls, telling us that Harris is in the lead, that everybody's so excited about her. It's joy. It's joy. Don't you feel the joy, George? Do you feel it from over there? The joy of Kamala Harris as the nominee. And that's what they're trying to, they're trying to gaslight us into this. But, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. The Joy division, that is the Democratic Party, so far as I'm concerned. But behind the cackle and behind she's a fine-looking woman for her age, and she moves quite well. She's not a bad dancer, but I have never heard her say a thing of substance, and anything that she officially stands for is anathema to me. So I think I'm going to say on November 6th or 7th or whenever they finish counting the votes, which may be some time, that I'm not happy that Donald Trump is the president of the United States, but I'm very happy that Kamala Harris is not. And I think that's what I said in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was the defeated one. I think I'm going to be saying it again in November 2024. I'm not going to press you unless you want to say, but that would be my view, that the devil we know in Donald Trump is better than the devil we don't know in a Kamala Harris administration. Last word to you, Kim.
But we do know this devil, actually, because Kamala Harris is completely run by Hillary Clinton and her entire apparatus. I can't stress this enough. She ended up getting, I've known since Kamala Harris jumped in the race in 2019 that she was the anointed one. I've been saying it ad nauseum to anybody who would listen to me, that she was the anointed one. When Joe Biden ended up with the nomination, I kept saying Kamala Harris will be the vice president-elect. She's going to be the one that they select because she's got the entire Hillary Clinton machine around her, the entire one. She's guided by Hillary Clinton. That is a Clinton person. She's a Clinton puppet completely. And we all know Hillary wants nothing more but war with Russia and to oust Putin. That is what she wants. She desires. I don't even know why she has this bone with him, but she just definitely does. So we do know actually what Kamala Harris will bring in. I don't think she'll be her own person. I think she's just going to be Hillary Clinton, and that'll be the presidency we get. Look, I'm inclined to say I'm with you in that I won't be happy if Trump's president, but I definitely will be happy and relieved that Kamala Harris is not. But I also just kind of feel like, let's just, for the people that are undecided, the independents that are out there, just vote for Donald Trump and let's just get it over with. Then he can never run again. That'll be it. And this will change the narrative of Democrats. They're going to hopefully have to start running on something next time. We'll stop this it's just reeled people into lunacy. And so I almost just want to rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with, let them do another 4 years just for the sake of that, just for the sake of maybe we'll return to normalcy. But of course, I know that's not, they're going to find another person and make that next person the new Donald Trump that they're going to demonize and vilify and say, it's going to be the end of the world. It's going to be the end of the world. But a lot of me just says, how can we just get this over with?
That's a new angle on which I shall contemplate. As always, Kim Iversen, a real pleasure to see you on the mother of all talk shows. Thanks for joining us. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to the hour. I discussed with Mr. Jeremy Corbyn on the telephone, and I have told him that I am now going to announce that I, the Workers' Party, and I believe millions in the country, call on Jeremy Corbyn to launch a British version of the new Popular Front. He may or may not want to form a party himself. Others will remain in their own parties. But he must be the leader of a popular front. He's not a perfect leader, Mr. Corbyn. None of us are perfect leaders, but he is the leader. And he does have a seat in Parliament with which to lead the millions of people who today and increasingly over the next months and years will reject the policy, personalities and direction of a Keir Starmer government. So, Mr. Corbyn, I told you I was going to say these words, and I now formally say them. On behalf of the Workers' Party of Britain, we ask you to lead and unite all the forces of the left, of the radical forces in Britain who reject neoliberalism, who reject endless war, who oppose genocide. Mr. Corbyn, lead us. We will follow you, and I very much hope to hear positive news on that from you by return.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Would you vote for Elon Musk as president? I'd rather have Pavel Durov of Telegram myself, but would you vote for Elon Musk as president? Yes or no? You can vote on the Telegram as long as it still exists. You can vote on Twitter. It might not exist in Europe for very much longer. You can vote on the YouTube community poll or on the YouTube stream. Nearly 30,000 now have voted on this poll. It's going to be a big one. On line one in North Carolina is Anila on Palestine. Anila, welcome.
Hi, thank you for answering.
Welcome. Go ahead.
So I'm 30 years old. I'm a millennial. I've registered to vote as a Democrat since I was like 18. But now, like the whole genocide happening, I think it's just a turning point for a lot of young people. We've been marching on the streets for almost a year now, and they're just not listening to us. And it's just funny how they think that, they can just ignore us and they think they still have a chance in November. But I just really think they're going to lose a lot of the young voters and the people with a conscience, that don't like seeing babies ripped apart on a daily basis on their phones. I mean, the genocide is just live streamed. And it's just, we just don't have any representation here in the United States, the progressive movement, the young people, and it's just really disheartening to see. And I know you guys in the UK, y'all have like PAL Action, and they're actually targeting, weapon manufacturers, and I just wish we had the guts here to do that. I know we kind of doing it. I know some groups are, but it's just, I wish we could have a revolution like the other countries are having.
Well, careful what you wish for. Might not be the kind of revolution that you and I would like. But the Democrats disgraced themselves completely over Palestine at the convention, didn't they? They couldn't even allow one vetted speaker give a vetted speech in support of people who are being genocided, starved, and driven out of their homes over and over again, and those homes now no longer exist. They couldn't allow even one person to speak at the convention on that subject. That seemed to me a turning point, Anila.
And it's just laughable because the Democrats, they like to talk about themselves as the party of human rights and freedom and democracy. And the whole genocide has just exposed the hypocrisy and double standards of everything. I mean, it's always been this way, but it's just really exposed it much more. So I'm really hoping Kamala does not win. I feel like if people vote for them, it shows that, you know, we can do a genocide and you guys will still vote for us. So that means they could do anything.
Because I cackle nicely and because I'm not Donald Trump. Well, I mean, if I had a single message, it would be don't vote Harris. Don't reward genocide. Don't vote Harris. Whoever else you vote for. Thank you, Anila. Don't be shy. Call back anytime. Comments on the poll. Citrus1 says Elon Musk is smart and capable, but anyone who talks about coupping Venezuela isn't qualified. Well, to be the President of the United States, that's probably a qualification. Kuplex says, come on, this is a tough one. It depends on who Elon was up against. Very dry. The Fix Collective says he can't run anyway. He wasn't born in the US. There's always a smart aleck that spoils things. Somebody texted me just as I finished my monologue to point out that Leitmotiv is a German word and not a French word. But look, I never went to university. I'm from the University of the Streets. Sometimes I make it wrong. But the people who drew up this poll do not have that excuse. They are all much better educated than me and failed to spot that which you have drawn to our attention. World Citizen says, Musk is a disgusting, gaslighting Zionist. Why would I vote for him? Indeed, R says at least Elon wouldn't censor like YouTube. Okay, let's go to Illinois. I suppose we have to. Silver is in Illinois on Israel. Silver, welcome.
Great. Thanks for having me. This is cool to get through on my very first time. My question had to do with a video from Hindustan Times where the Israeli envoy is saying he wants to blow up the United Nations in New York. And I've been sharing this and talking about it, and a lot of people don't seem to think it's real and that it's fake news. I did find it.
Oh, it's real. It's absolutely real. It's absolutely real. That's what he said. He said it should be wiped off the face of the earth.
And imagine if any other country did this. Like, you know, if England did this,
They're not just any country, Silver. They're not just any country. They can do anything they like. They can break any law that they like for as long as they like. They can commit any crime. They can hang any 7-month pregnant woman. They can butcher any baby. They can behead any little girl. They can blow the brains out of any little boy. They can murder any person, all the time, any time. But they still get to sit in the United Nations, even while their departing envoy is saying that it should be wiped off the face of the map. They're not just any country. Silver, last word to you.
One would think that this would cause a stir, that there would be other news channels carrying it besides the Hindustan Times, But that's the world we live in.
It's a good
It's
point.
the world we
I
live
don't
in.
myself take the Hindustan Times. Once upon a time I did, but I don't any longer. And I only know that it's true because I saw him saying it in the back of a car. His lips were moving. The words were coming out of his mouth. I could hear them and see him say them. So it's definitely true. He definitely said it. But his successor will take their seat in the United Nations. No doubt also wishing to blow the place up. Definitely still defending the massacre of hundreds of United Nations employees over the last 11 months, the virtually total destruction of United Nations institutions in Gaza, the blowing up of UN schools, UN clinics, UN food depots, not to even mention the absolute refusal to obey the decisions of the United Nations enshrined in international law. They're not just any country. Silver, thanks for the call. Now, don't forget, if you've just joined the show, you can download our MOATS podcast from tomorrow morning. You'll get a compressed, bite-sized version of the show onto your phone or computer. This week, we're in the top 20 in China and Saudi Arabia again, and we're in the top 5 in Kenya again. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen. Now, get voting on the poll. Would you vote for Elon Musk as president, even though he's not actually able to stand because he wasn't born in the United States? But was Barack Obama? Was Kamala Harris? I'm only asking. Susie is in Dunstable on Brexit. Go ahead, Susie.
Hello, George. Thank you for taking my call.
Welcome.
It's regarding the referendum on the 23rd of June 2016, I think it's called Brexit, which was done during a Conservative government. And I've got 2 questions. Question 1, why and how could 4 prime ministers fail so miserably in making Brexit happen? And then that's question 1. And then leading up to question 2, I've heard that Starmer is going to reverse Brexit, which our nation voted for. So question 2 is it allowable, if that's the correct word, for him to do this? Because if he does, it is going against what the nation voted for.
Well, they don't give a damn about democracy, none of them. The reason they failed to make Brexit a success, or in the first 2 cases even happen at all, is because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in it because they represent the very same financial capitalist interests that fought so hard to stop us from voting for Brexit. They believe in freedom of movement, of cheap labour across the continent, wherever the big businesses want and need it most. They believe in the absolute free movement of capital. So a profit made in this country gets invested or spent in another country altogether. They believe in a European army so that Europe's security is not dependent on the United States to the extent that it has been. They believe in European-wide government because they know that the only way that they can be sure of having their way is to transfer as much power to a supranational authority which is not elected, which is not removable, which cannot be stopped from doing what it is intent upon doing. The reason they were in love with the European Union was because the EU Commission was in charge of most of the most important aspects of our lives, and we didn't vote for them and couldn't remove them. So they never wanted Brexit in the first place. They fought tooth and nail against it. The banks, the big industries, the deep state, the mass media, all of them were viscerally hostile to Brexit because they are all part of the globalist mindset. The WEF and whatever other initials you want to throw into the alphabet soup, they believe in that kind of globalism. And those of us who believed in Britain, those of us who believed in the British people and their historic greatness, those of us who believed that the British people were more than capable of governing ourselves, we were traduced as nativists, as nationalists, as Little Englanders, a bit difficult in my case, but as small-minded people who could not see the value of the entire population of Lithuania relocating to Lincolnshire if the idea in any way attracted them. The truth is, none of these prime ministers wanted this to happen, and they did their best to make the hash of it that they have made. So that, just like with the NHS, if you run it down enough, people will start saying, this NHS cannot be saved, we'll have to go down the American route of private health insurance. That's what's happening there. So they have made such a hash of Brexit. They hope that public opinion in Britain will begin to say, this Brexit's no good, let's get back into the European Union. I don't believe that Starmer intends formally to rejoin the European Union. He'll just do it bit by bit, salami style. Bit by bit, we'll get closer and closer to the European Union, unless the European Union begins to fall apart at the seams because of the vociferous pressures inside the EU which exist and may well explode if Germany actually collapses. Susie, thanks. Long time since I've been able to speak about Brexit. Now, coming up after the break, he is the Moscow Mule. He is the wisest English-speaking man, anyway, in the Kremlin, in Moscow. He's Che Bose, and he's coming up right after this. Stay tuned.
There's a group of people in Twitter who are daily posting discussions about Gaza, Lebanon, what's happening, news updates, aid for Gaza, and trying to enlist the help of Jordan and France and any other regional entity that will help get more aid into Gaza and all of Gaza, all of Palestine, for everyone who suffers. So I want to request that everyone who is listening to this go to your local council meetings and peacefully request that their representatives at the local levels do this, because it works.
Thanks for the call, Pia, in Uruguay. I'm a free man of the city of San Francisco, awarded to me for my work on Palestine, on the steps of City Hall itself. So it was a particular delight for me that the San Francisco Council voted by 8 votes to 3 to demand a ceasefire. And that decision didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of campaigning to force the local authority representatives to vote.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Would you vote for Elon Musk as president? Answer yes or no on my Telegram channel, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel on the YouTube stream. And don't forget to support me and the show on patreon.com/George Galloway. I'm recording tomorrow my first short history of, from my perspective, a George Galloway short history of Yasser Arafat is the first one, but we'll be doing dozens of them on periods in history, movements, individuals, and great events, as well as my movies and lots of other original content. E. Walker says the Real News Network was pressured into firing Chris Hedges, who has spoken out against the genocide in Gaza. Indeed so. And Crowhawk says it would be interesting to submit a Freedom of Information request for communications between Washington, D.C., Tel Aviv, and the UK Foreign Office prior to Medhurst's arrest. Indeed it would. Athena O says Mandela was on their terrorist list too. Medhurst is in good company. And Naveen says Adolf Hitler was the one who talked about and advocated a European Union. Yes, underneath his jackboot. In the 1920s, he spoke about it. So, David is up first. He's in Swindon, and it's on RFK. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, we've spoken many times and a lot of agreement, but I am confused. Please help me. I do not understand where you're coming from on RFKJr, because I know we're all entitled to change our minds, but I thought you said that it was like a toss-up between Ukraine and Israel. He backs Israel so much, and Trump backs Israel so much, that the way that you're talking, you're going to have Ukraine, there'll be a peace deal, but Israel will rule the Middle East. In myself very well.
Well,
RFK,
of course, RFK and Trump are fanatic supporters of Israel. That's why I wouldn't vote for them. But Biden and Harris are also fanatic supporters of Israel, and that's why I wouldn't vote for them.
Let me just.
Dr. Jill Stein is the only Jew. Dr. Jill Stein is the only Jew in the race, and she fully supports Palestine. That's why I'd be voting for her. Which part of that did you not understand, David?
Okay, all right, I understand that. Right, I understand that. The other thing is, if the three of them get up, is it J.D. Vance, Trump, and RFK Jr. on a platform together, they will be a disaster. Because if you just read the thing, because if you read the things that JFK says about having like a worm in his brain, about the COVID vaccine being engineered so it wouldn't attack Chinese people and Jews. He's actually said that.
I haven't heard him saying that. And I don't agree with his views on vaccines. But on this.
Yeah.
You see this book, David? On this.
Right,
on stopping this.
Yeah.
On stopping nuclear war. On stopping World War III breaking out in Ukraine. I fully agree with him. And I fully agree with Trump. And yet Harris and Biden are the people who brought us to the threshold of nuclear war. Again, that's not hard to understand, David. I don't want Trump or Biden-Harris. But Biden-Harris are the people who brought us to the brink of nuclear war. And Trump and Kennedy are going to bring the Ukraine war to an end. I mean, it's not rocket science, if you'll forgive the pun.
No, I understand that. But then you're just transferring it, because then you'll just bring nuclear war to the Middle East, to the Red Sea, to the Straits of Hormuz.
I hope, of course, I hope not. And I'll oppose that when we get to it. But the most urgent, pressing question in world politics today is to stop the NATO-Russia war in Ukraine. I think you grasp that. Now, as to a disaster, I don't think, none of them are great speakers so far as I'm concerned, but I'm biased. But if you want to compare a Trump-Kennedy platform, and Vance for that matter, and Biden-Harris-Blinken platform, then Trump wins that hands down. All Kamala can do is cackle.
Embarrassment. Yeah. The laughing. Yeah.
The laughing gas.
Okay. Yeah.
Look,
yeah,
thanks very much,
Kamala.
David. You got my blood up. 26,944 people have voted. Overwhelmingly no. Sorry, Elon. You're not going to be the president. And not just because you lost the MOATS poll. Jill Martin says, bring it. I don't worry about nuclear war. Okay, Jill. Are you like terminally ill with 6 weeks to go and no children or grandchildren? Because that's kind of the only person who isn't worried about nuclear war. Unless, of course, they're in Ward 5 at Broadmoor. E.R. Garner says, I don't want to vote for millionaires and billionaires who are bought and paid for. Who's running other than millionaires and billionaires? Christine Peach says, Jill Stein has my vote 2024 and mine. Barbara is in Tunisia on Palestine. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, George. Greetings of peace to you and Lady Gayatri and all of the good people working behind the scenes. I am so thrilled to listen to you every week.
How kind.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
for
much.
all of the work that you are doing is making a difference in this world, and I am so happy to see people like you. And George, I must I have given you already a new name, and it is the Lion of Palestine.
Thank you so much. I've always been a big cat, Barbara. What's the feeling in Tunisia about the current situation in Gaza? Is it freely reported? Do the people in Tunisia know just how bad the crimes in Gaza have been?
Well, it's hard for me to say, really, George, because I don't follow politics here, and I don't have a television set. I rely mostly on the internet for my news. But people are disgusted with the situation, and they throw up their hands wondering how this is possible, that this is continuing for so long. And they are completely 100% with the Palestinian people, of course. They are brothers and sisters, and they feel very much part of the Palestinian cause.
Barbara in Tunisia, first call ever we've had from Tunisia. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Got to go to Florida now and talk with Alan on the doomsday clock. Go ahead, Alan.
Yes, George, it's an honor to speak to you. That seems to get people going. Like in the U.S., everything is going like we're not about to go extinct, you know. But when I bring up the doomsday clock, people kind of they freak out, and I think that's the way everybody should be, freaked out right now. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, it's insane, and I've been through other periods when nuclear war looked likely. As a small child, I experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis. As a political activist of some prominence, I experienced the 1980s, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, re-nuclearization of Britain and the European theatre, the sighting of cruise missiles at Greenham Common and so on. But I've never known a time, and this is the third big moment, when doomsday was discernible, where fewer people were concerned or even knowledgeable about it. As I say, if you read this book, Nuclear War, A Scenario, then you'll realize that it really is the end. It's really the end. Now, someone mocked me online at the beginning of the show. George has been predicting nuclear Armageddon every week. Well, you'll be laughing at that until the moment that it happens. And then you'll never laugh again. You'll never breathe again. Your children will never breathe again. Their children will never be born. No tree will grow, no bird will fly, no animal roam. It will be the end, extinct, like Mars, just dry dust with no trace of life. Is that not something worth getting worked out about, Alan?
Oh my goodness, it's insane, and it's for no reason. It's just for money. You know, it's these arms companies lobbying and making billions. I have friends that work in those companies, and they feel terrible. But engineers, there's not really that many jobs here in the U.S. So they got to take what they get. But it's really disappointing for them.
You bet. Alan, in Florida, we're only seconds from doomsday. That's the truth of it. And so many people haven't even woken up to it. They have sleepwalked right to the very doorstep of nuclear Armageddon. Michael Horton says, J.D. Vance is under Peter Thiel wing, the Palantir surveillance monopoly. No daylight between him and Thiel Stasi initiative. And Ghislaine Conspiracy Theory says, though Orange Men brought his own money to the table, which makes for potential independence if they can't blackmail or whatever as well. That's Donald Trump they're talking about, of course. Naveen, again, says, luckily, the world is full of good-thinking people who should unite and fight against evil in whatever shape or form it manifests itself. And Break Up Google says, Behmer declares George the Lion of Palestine. In the Behmer mind, they believe that is enough to claim they did their part. Well done, Behmer. Don't know what that means, but Abdul is in Minnesota and wants to talk about the US and its puppets. Go ahead, Abdul.
Hi, George. Thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate that. Yeah, my question is regarding basically these most of the Near Eastern countries are a puppet of the West. And my question is, they have the resources and everything. Why they have accepted such a slavery, basically making themselves slaves to the policy of the West? I don't know the question. That's why I'm asking from you. Thank you.
No, I get you. There's a lot of sheep in the world. People who are too stupid, too institutionalized, too Stockholm syndromed, to break from what their masters are telling them, no matter how many times what their master told them before turned out to be wrong, harmful, even super harmful to they themselves. It's the reason that the sheep get on the truck for the final journey, isn't it? They are too stupid to know that oblivion is their destination. There's also a comprador of collaborators in every country that get rich and fat on the collaboration. And I don't want to go through each Arab country naming them, but some of them are richer and fatter than others. And they would rather live a life of sin and corruption and wealth in this world than to dream of being anywhere nice in the next life. They don't really believe in the next life. They don't really believe in God. They don't believe in the judgment day. They pretend to. That's part of their shtick. But they don't. They can't. If they did, they wouldn't do the things that they do, commit the sins and the crimes that they do. They wouldn't if they believed that there was a judgment day and that there was a heaven that one could live for eternity in. So they pretend that, but they don't believe it. It's plain to me that they don't believe it. So that's also part of the problem. And that comprador of rich fat men live a great life, and they hire armed people to keep them in power and to suppress anyone who might take any action that might one day lead to them losing that power. But when you boil it all down, Abdul, it's not quite 1% against the 99. It's a bit more than that. I'll say 7% and 93. There's 93% of us who gain nothing and who are completely opposed to the crimes of the 7% who gain. Some gain more than others, but the 7% who share the gains. And you know, I hate to put it like this, but if the 93% are stupid enough to allow themselves to be exploited and periodically marched off to war and death and dishonor, what can you do? I'm going to keep trying, but only because I'm aiming for the judgment day. I'm going to keep trying, no matter how stupid they are. The only thing in mitigation of that I'll say, oftentimes you don't know what other people are thinking. My butcher today, who has never said a word to me and never showed by any smile or body language of any kind that he even knew who I was, let alone supported me. Things are so bad in Britain. My butcher followed me to the door of the store this afternoon and said, "Can you not get a job in number 10 Downing Street rather than that tyrant that's in there now?" So maybe amongst the 93, there is a sleeping giant waiting to waken and stand up. I pray for that, Abdul. So should you. Now, Che Bose was not only booked to come on tonight, but I saw him advertising earlier that he was coming on tonight. But his phone is off. So I very much hope that Che is okay. And if we reach him, of course, he'll be on the show. I very much hope that nothing bad has befallen him. But the good news is, no Che Bose, more time for your calls. We'll take your calls all the way to the hour. Shall I go on to Donna in Panama? Well, who wouldn't? Donna, what's your question?
Hi, George. I am a new supporter, and I absolutely love your show, and I'm sharing your podcast and your video with all my friends here in Panama. I am an expat, and I didn't quite know what to expect moving here to Panama, which I've done for primarily financial reasons. But I am distressed by how brainwashed Panamanians, so many, not all, but so many Panamanians are. I mean, I thought that I had gotten away from brainwashed Americans, but there's so many people here who think just like the brainwashed Americans, and I realize that a lot of it has to do with American Hollywood movies and Hollywood news shows, which they have access to. And I'm particularly speaking about the issue of Israel-Palestine. And I've just been appalled by how pro-Israel so many people are here. That's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, why do you call Michelle Obama Big Mike?
Oh dear. Let me deal with the second question last, while I try to formulate an answer that will not get us kicked off YouTube. The first thing I'd say, Donna, and that was a beautiful call, I'm very glad that you made it, is that with all respect to the good people of Panama, Panama is no more than an American colony. So Panama inevitably is imbued with the prevailing orthodoxy of Yankee power. And when they can't subvert Panama, they just invade it and take it over, and you know what I'm talking about. But that's by no means the prevailing view in Latin America. If you were to go to Mexico, you would scarcely find a single supporter of Israel in Mexico, a vast, much more significant country than the one you're in. If you were to go to Chile, if you were to go to Venezuela, if you were to go to Peru, you would not find hardly a single supporter of Israel in the whole country. So that's by no means pan-Latin American feeling that you are discovering. I'm really glad that you have discovered the mother of all talk shows, and I hope you will not be offended if I restrict my answer to Big Mike to this: she's pretty big. And Barack once called her Michael in a speech when she was standing next to him. He said, "Michael and I," which planted a worm of suspicion in my brain. And then I looked at her, and she's actually a bit more manly than he is. Put it this way, I wouldn't like to fight her. I wouldn't like to go 7 rounds with Big Mike. I'd rather go 7 rounds with Mike Tyson than with Big Mike Obama. I mean, she's got muscles in all kinds of unlikely places. Her biceps, her groin, many places. She's quite a phenomenon, if you get my drift. I'm sure she's a lovely person. Well, actually, I'm sure she's not. Let me take a quick break. A big thanks to the people who support me on the Patreon page. I really have come to depend on the income from that. It costs £1 a week, not even the price of a cup of coffee in an insalubrious cafe. If you think you could stretch to that, please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, the MOATS team have added a tiered system on my Patreon page where you can become an official MOATS graduate. How about that? I speak as someone who graduated from nowhere, from the factory floor in Michelin. But you can become a MOATS graduate and legend. You can give a regular donation to support the show and my work. You can now upgrade from a mere Patreon to a MOATS graduate at £10 a month, as opposed to £5 a month, I think it is. And you can receive official MOATS legend status for £20.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Back to the lines then. Mohammed is in Ohio. Let's talk to him about Palestine. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway, for taking the call. First-time caller, so thank you for making it easy from us across the world. In terms of the Gaza and Israel situation, here's what I think. And I grew up in Egypt, which is a neighboring country. I've worked in the UAE as an expat. I can tell you that no Israeli will ever live in a country under the name of Palestine and vice versa. And to me, I think the only solution is in the hands of the Israeli public. There needs to be some kind of popular uprising, revolution, coup, call it whatever you want to call it, because we know the archipelago of Palestine will never be a country. It just doesn't work. And so the only way this would work is if the people on both sides, but really there's no power with the Palestinian people as opposed to the Israeli citizens, they need to rise up, take out the government, have a coalition government of Christians, Muslims, and Jews who get together and finally make a constitution for that place and call it the Holy Land, call it whatever you want to call it, but that would be the only compromise that both sides would be willing to live under. Neither one will live under the other.
Well, that's a bleak outlook. You may be right. If you're looking to the Israeli public to overthrow their government and to form a coalition government with others, I'm afraid you're going to have a very long wait. That will, I'd go as far as to say, never, ever happen. The vast majority of Israelis, the vast majority, at least 85, maybe 90, maybe more % of Israelis are completely hostile to sharing power with the indigenous people of Palestine. Never mind for a minute allowing those who are outside of Palestine, driven out and now living as refugees in their millions, ever to return to their country. So I take the view, I've said it before, that whilst a surgeon could not possibly operate on his own foot, no matter how skilled a surgeon he was, he could not operate on his own foot. The Israeli public will have to be influenced from outside. And here's how it can be done. The country you come from, the mighty, former beating heart of the Arab world, Egypt, will have to have a revolution. And the Egyptian people will have to be led by people worthy of the name. The land of Gamal Abdel Nasser cannot be led by the pygmies that came after him. And if the Egyptian people rose up and overthrew their tyrant, their latest tyrant, there have been many others, then that would change the ball game completely. The Arab countries surrounding Palestine and the Arab countries in the periphery, I don't really mean the ones in the Maghreb, I really mean the ones in the Gulf. If the Arab governments in the Gulf stopped collaborating with Israeli apartheid and oppression and genocide, if they stopped financially enabling it, if Turkey, a powerful Muslim country, would stop allowing the oil that Israel uses to commit genocide, to flow freely through a pipeline across its territory, and genuinely end the collaboration between Turkish business and Israeli business. If people would stop the sectarian madness of hating Iran more than they hate those who hate all the Muslims, Sunni and Shia, and couldn't even tell the difference between the two of them anyway. If people like you in the United States can join forces as one hand and vote for Jill Stein, and if she's not on the ballot, vote anybody but Harris and Biden, for they are the people that have brought us this genocidal year, the year of genocide. There is a book title. I'll probably have to write it. The Year of Genocide. Anybody who votes in America for the people who enabled that year of genocide, well, there's no hope for them. I know that you, as a man called Mohammed in Ohio, which I know well, I've spoken all over Ohio. I've spoken in Cleveland. I've spoken in Dublin, Ohio. If you're watching in Ohio and you saw me speak there, you'll recall the message I had then. And it's the same message today. Mohammed, thanks. Nature Calls says America has become the Darth Vader to Israel's Emperor Palpatine. As will be obvious, I've never watched Star Wars. Brad Briggs says the brainwashing starts with Exodus. It's a historical novel by American novelist Leon Uris about the founding of the State of Israel. And Juan Francisco Urusti says we Mexicans vastly support Palestine. That's a fact. I know that for a fact. Thank you, Juan. In London, Kathy is on the line. Which country to live in? She wants to know. Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, that's right, George. Like you, I'm very much on the left. I'm a Corbyn supporter and very disillusioned with how he got nobbled. And I don't like living in England anymore. And I just wonder if you can suggest any country that would be better than living here.
Well, most of them would be better than living here. I can't go because this is my country and I am attempting to make it better, so I can't go. But if you were my daughter, and you could be, by the sound of you, and you asked me that question genuinely, I'd say go to Russia. The Russian government has just made it virtually free to emigrate to Russia. You no longer need a visa. You don't any longer have to speak Russian. And if you go there, the economy is booming. The culture is wonderful. And if you want to go to Siberia, which is the richest part of Russia, they'll give you land free. There's plenty of it. Russia is the biggest country in the world. It's the biggest country, therefore, in Europe. Moscow is the biggest city in Europe. And Siberia has land that they will give you for free. But even if you don't want to go, and it does get cold there in winter, then places like Sochi, places like Moscow itself, like St. Petersburg, are perfectly dreamlike. The only thing you have to do to move to Russia is believe in family. You have to share family values. You have to hate the degeneracy, the degeneration of our Western society. In other words, you have to be a kind of small c conservative-minded when it comes to social issues and so on. But if that's you, then you could do no worse. and you could do no better than leave this septic isle, for that is, I'm afraid, what we have become, and go to Russia's green and pleasant land. There are other places in Europe that are better. Spain is better than Britain. Portugal is better than Britain. There are also places outside the EU that are wonderful places to live in. Budapest is one of the great cities of the world in Hungary. Belgrade in Serbia. All of these places are better. You'll get a better standard of life. Your children will be brought up in a better and safer atmosphere. I mean, I follow my friend Norman Brennan, the retired policeman, who was on the show a couple of episodes ago. I follow him on Twitter. He's got his finger on the pulse. The crime in Britain, particularly in London, Kathy, is out of control. If you had a teenage child, you would not dream of letting them walk around the streets of London. They'd be killed for their trainers. I mean, Gayatri and I had breakfast with a guy from Michigan in the United States. He was told, he's a tough guy too. He was told by people, take that watch off. That watch is too nice to go walking around London. And this was in Marble Arch. You're not safe to have a good watch on your wrist in Marble Arch. So it's a depressing picture. The only consolation is that Keir Starmer says it's about to get much worse under him. John is in New York on Claire Daly. I'm all ears, John.
How you doing, George? So great to talk to you again this week. I must say that I have just completed my freshman year at the Global University at $5 a month, and I now increase it for $10 a month for my sophomore year. I have
God bless you.
questions.
Thank you, John.
I have two questions. The first is, I thought that you had said previously that you had made plans or were in the middle of making plans to come to the United States. I hope that is true, and that I will make every effort to shake your hand. The second question is on Claire Daly, who I never knew of until I started watching you, frankly, George, and I miss her. I know that she was not reelected to the European Parliament. So I just wanted to know if you knew anything about her whereabouts, what she's been doing, and is it possible that she'll make an appearance on the show? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a while since she's been on the show, but she has been a guest of ours in the past, and we greatly admire her. It's true that she was not re-elected to the European Parliament. Neither was her close colleague, Mick Wallace. Both of them were narrowly defeated, and the European Parliament, such as it is very much poorer for that. She, in particular, is an outstanding tribune. I've called her the Joan of Arc of Irish politics. I know that she'll be back. She was previously a member of the Irish Parliament. I'm sure that she will be again. And she's still quite young, full of energy and absolute commitment. So you definitely haven't seen the last of her. And you should follow her on social media, and you'll see the kind of things that she is doing. But the European public have lost her in the European Parliament, and that is a very great shame. Alas, I was to be addressing the Arab American Congress in Michigan in, I think, October maybe September, but that has fallen through. So I think it's probably not safe for me to go to America under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but I might make an effort to do so if and when Donald Trump is back in the White House. John, thank you, and God bless you for your support on my Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, Gayatri is the one that broke the news to me that we were now no longer going to the United States, but we've got lots of other things to do. But tell me, what's rattling on the social media?
Well, ever since the caller asking where to move, we're hearing this question more often now, don't we? We're discussing this casually now. Where do we go then? People are not feeling comfortable in their skin. And so lots of people responding to that. Ashen Duke says, I must say Putin's invitation sounds rather appealing if you wish to escape the neoliberal malaise. And the Risen People Air says, starting an Irish community in Siberia. Sounds good.
Now there's an idea. If you do that, I might come and join.
All right, so Paul Siri says, hi George, it looks like it's going to be a 2-horse race on the 5th of November. Which horse is going to be better for Palestine? Now, Kim obviously said in the interview that Kamala will probably be the better one, but I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know how you could conclude that.
Yeah.
I'll gamble and say I think that Trump will be better, because I think that Trump is lying when he talks about Palestine. I think he's doing it to get votes and to get money. But once elected, I think the same realpolitik will inform his views on the Middle East. And don't forget, he's got powerful Saudi friends, rich and powerful Saudi friends. And I think he'll be more practical than he sounds at this distance. But both of them, on the face of it, and on their past record, are horrific on Palestine.
Yeah. All three of them, if you want to include RFKJr, of
Kennedy,
course, the biggest disappointment.
Kennedy is inexplicable because every other part of his political platform is good to brilliant.
Yes.
But on that, it is truly horrific, obscene, couldn't be worse. And that leads me to think...
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
...that he's compromised.
Yeah.
I don't think it's about money for him. I don't think he's a guy who's in it for the money.
No.
I think they've got something bad, very bad on him.
Well, let's see. It's the end of August now, September comes.
It's almost just around the corner.
It's really
the US
around the
election,
corner. Yeah, pity we couldn't be there in the US.
It would be good,
It would have been good, but then, being
not if I got
allowed
thrown
entrance. Exactly.
Not if I got thrown into Guantanamo Bay.
So Michael Callie, he emails. He emails from New Jersey, USA. He says, George, I weep for my country, which once promised opportunity, fairness, and justice to every American. Today, the level of ignorance among the populace who consume the mainstream media lies like they eat cornflakes for breakfast is depressing. We are in an irreversible decline and soon will be bankrupt and have to print money until its only worth is to clean our backsides. The politicians fiddle and promise free gifts to everyone while the nation burns to the ground.
Get a B-Day. Don't clean your backside with a dollar bill or any other paper. Just my advice.
Yes, it's the mark of civilization. I second. Tom Orr says, as nice as it is to hear that Trump and RFK alliance want to tackle some big issues you have alluded to, at this point it's only election rhetoric. They would have to take on massive, powerful corporation to deliver on the rhetoric. So I'll believe it when I see it. But I suppose it serves as a powerful distraction from the elephant in the room. The other thing that they are united on. Good point, Tom, and as we've been discussing this, of course.
I would trust Kennedy on... If I was murdered by the CIA and the FBI, I'd expect my son, I'd expect my nephew to do anything that he could to bring justice to the murderers, the institutions that had killed me. I'd confidently expect that, but then I have a very high opinion of my family. Jack Kennedy was murdered. Bobby Kennedy was murdered by the same three-letter agencies that Donald Trump wants to put RFKJr in charge of. How about that? That's worth the entrance fee alone, isn't it?
Finally, this poll is so funny because obviously they shoot us in the leg, the foot by saying he cannot.
Cut our legs off.
Yeah, I mean, okay, all right, hypothetically then. Nikki A says, Elon Musk as president of what? Where? The only thing he could be is the president for ordering paper clips. And I do not mean Operation Paperclips, which was the secret US intelligence program.
Yeah, but
post-World War II.
Of course. It's a measure of US-centricness that the people who drew up that poll didn't say.
Yeah.
President of what?
Yeah.
Like there's only one president.
Exactly.
Only one country got a president. Would you vote for President Elon Musk? Or Elon Musk as president of France, you might have said.
What about the EU?
Or president of Indonesia. Or of the EU.
That would have been good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Where was he born anyway?
South African. He's South African.
He's South
That's
African.
Why, yeah.
Okay. Nearly an American. Well, I mean, that means I can't run for president.
You can't. You're too young anyway.
I could run for the Congress, however. And I do know some people who are. Nothing else.
Nature Calls, just this one is very funny. Nature Calls says, I would vote for Elon Musk to manage my business, maybe even as chancellor, but certainly not head of state. But this thing that's so funny that people were saying, just because he's a billionaire, they're dismissing him because he's a billionaire. Antonio says, I'd give my vote to any billionaire on an electric chair rather than my vote in an election.
I get it. Look, Musk, I declare, I'm suing him, and for a lot. And I'm meeting his representatives in Dublin next month. So he's not my favorite person. No. He gravely libeled me, gravely damaged me, defamed me in a way that could have cost me my life. He's not my favorite person. But I'll tell you, Twitter's better under him than it was before. And if he was running YouTube, it would be better than YouTube currently is. We're under threat from YouTube. The guy from Rumble, the owner of Rumble, put out a message tonight saying, phew, I just got out of Europe. I've escaped Europe.
Escaped the continent.
That's how bad things are. Yeah. The owner of Telegram, the owner of Rumble, and the owner of Twitter are all being threatened, or in the case of Pavel, arrested. He's in jail right now. Why?
It's unbelievable.
Because they will not accept the diktat of the deep state to toe the line on the big issues. That's a frightening situation.
It's very frightening.
If they can arrest multi-millionaires, billionaires, what about the rest of us? What's that noise? They're at the door. We might not even get out for chips tonight. Let's go to Los Angeles and hear from Anthony on the DNC. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hi, George. How are you doing? Long-time listener, first-time caller. Big fan of yours.
Thank you, sir.
I wanted to bring up, I'm a first-generation Palestinian American. I still have my family in the West Bank under occupation. And I just wanted to bring up, if you saw the footage of the protesters, there were some young women getting beaten by the Chicago Police Department outside of the DNC. And I'm just baffled how, if this was happening in Pyongyang or in Moscow or in Tehran, it would be all over everywhere. But America has very much turned into I'm 24 years old, and my whole life there's been a narrative of what we're supposed to be, and it's very much turned into what we are supposed to be fighting. At least what I was told my whole life we're supposed to be standing up against. And I wanted to know if you saw that, or if it reached the United Kingdom or
I
other
did.
parts of the world.
I did, Anthony, but not through anything that the British media did. I saw it on social media. I saw it thanks to Elon Musk, if I'm being blunt. I saw it on Twitter. None of it appeared on the British television. None of it appeared in the British newspapers, which are, in any case, almost defunct. And most of the television is mostly defunct, being kept alive on life support from various private and public sources. But I did see it. And to be 24, because I was politically active on the streets when the DNC met in Chicago in 1968. And when Mayor Daley's police force laid into the anti-Vietnam War protesters with a savagery that at that point had never been seen before in the Western world. And the young people who were being savagely assaulted, in some cases killed, broken, mutilated, hospitalized, the young people were chanting, "The whole world is watching," over and over. I remember it, rings in my ears. The whole world is watching. Not that that in any way blunted the assault. Not that that in any way embarrassed Mayor Daley. He was unembarrassable. But here's the difference. It was true because I saw what happened at the DNC in Chicago in 1968 in all of the newspapers and on all of the mainstream television around the world. And now I can only see it on my phone for as long as Elon Musk is in charge of Twitter, or for as long as Elon Musk is prepared to let me see that kind of thing on his platform. And that's a measure of how some things never change and of how some things have changed very much for the worse. In 1968, in your country as in mine, those who ruled us and those who propagandized for those who ruled us led us to believe that we were the good guys. We were the white hats. We were Wyatt Earp. And it was the others who did these kinds of things, jailing people for their thoughts, deplatforming them, silencing them, even imprisoning them, even, if necessary, killing them. It was the other guys that did that, we were told, back in the 60s. But it could no longer be said with any credibility now at all. I've got to cut you short, Anthony. Thanks for the call, because we've got a legend on the line. It's Erobos in New York on Russia. You definitely want to hear this. Erobos, welcome back.
Salutations and greetings, Mr. Galloway. To you, the effervescent Mrs. Galloway, the MOATS staff, the followers, and especially, I don't know if it's a record, but I've heard and I've watched many new callers, and congratulations to them, because they empower all of us with their calls from around the globe. I wanted to share something from an analyst. He had mentioned that, and this is what really got me thinking about this, Russia's response, or really tepid response to the invasion of Kursk, they didn't even call in any ambassadors. They just released a letter of complaint. And they was like, yeah, okay. So I'm thinking going back to 2014, when they were attacking, these Ukrats, Sloboda and C-14 and the rest of these Nazi residue were attacking the Donbass, and in all the years killed over 15,000 people. And, then they circled back to Crimea, then they went into Belgorod, now they're at Kursk. And it seems to me like Russia is allowing this war to continue, not solely for the purposes of demilitarization and denazification, but it seems like it fuels their response, because, I've frequently called and I've given my refrain that the Soviet Union would not be having any of this. However, it seems like in their negotiation with the BRICS, because both Putin and Xi appear to be CEOs of companies, and studying their movements and, how they treat balance sheets, they seem to be hyper-focused on business. And, if a couple people die, and it's a cold, callous calculus, and it may not be correct, it's just their approach seems to be more business first. And yet some people got to be sacrificed. And, in the further objectives of BRICS and consolidation of our power, then so mote it be. And again, I'm not saying this is correct, but it just seems like, because I'll just conclude with this. Russia knows where every single command center in Ukraine is. Right? They have already demolished some of them. You may remember the 50 or so French that were eliminated a couple months back. So they can destroy these nerve centers of intel overnight, in one night of bombing. And that would be the end of, because then the ground troops will be isolated and it'll become a mop-up operation. But they're not doing that. So it's like they're just encouraging this war to continue. And again, this is my perspective. And of course, as Morpheus said to Neo aboard the Nebuchadnezzar, in my favorite film, The Matrix, time is always against us. So over to you, Mr. G. Oh, and yes, I'm looking forward to your memoirs. Let me know when they drop. I want to read them.
Well, thank you, Erebos. Your analysis is entirely legitimate. It is consistent with the evidence that we have seen in both cases, more than both actually, but I'll not go into that. If I were the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, I would already, 10 months ago, I would already have sailed a Chinese hospital ship into the harbor in Gaza, filled with medics and medicines. And I would have told Netanyahu, don't you dare fire on this hospital ship. We are entering this harbor to give medical succor and comfort in pursuit of the United Nations Charter and our international obligations under international law. I would long ago have done that. And I'm going to take a flyer. Netanyahu would not have dared to have fired on a Chinese hospital ship pulling into Gaza. That did not happen. There have been regular statements. They've been good statements. But they didn't put a potato on the plate for any hungry kid in Gaza. They didn't put a polio vaccine in the arm of any kid in Gaza. And they did not put a roof over the head of any kid in Gaza. And they did not, above all, stop the daily mass murder of the kids and the women and the men in Gaza. So I wish China was more confident about asserting its undoubted good attitudes towards the Palestinians. I wish they were more confident and determined in proving that in practice. Putin's conduct of the war in Ukraine has not just been velvet-gloved and soft-chewed. A whole department store of velvet gloves have been placed over the hands of the Russian forces. Otherwise, as you just said, this war would long ago have been over. The Ukrainian incursion into Kursk is massacring civilians in broad daylight. I saw some video today. An old man on a bicycle, murdered right there and then, for no reason, other than that he was Russian. I know the Soviet Union. I knew it well. To paraphrase, it was a friend of mine. Russia is not the Soviet Union. No one would have dared to attack the Soviet Union. But Ukraine does dare. Germany does dare. Britain does dare. The little barking dogs around the Baltics, they do dare. Poland does dare. And lesser countries in Europe do dare to attack Russia. Now, some people think that, and you and I remember this night very well, that when Muhammad Ali roped the dope, George Foreman, he let him punch himself out. He was on the ropes, soaking up the punishment, and then in an epiphany of righteous violence, and with a combination of speed and grace, he laid out the giant George Foreman on the canvas and made yet another comeback as the champion of the world. There are some people who think that that's what Russia is doing. I understand that argument. I don't share it. If I were not the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, but in the Kremlin, running the Russian response, I'd have my pit boots on and my velvet gloves would long ago have been thrown away. But as I am neither, I can only be a commentator on these events. No one's even asked for my advice, either in Beijing or in Moscow. But you asked for it, and you're a worthy man, and I'm glad I was able to give it. It's 7 minutes after I should have stopped, so forgive me for trying your patience. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I have enjoyed presenting it. A big thanks to all of you, and as Arobos just said, a record number of new callers and even some new countries. Panama, Tunisia, how wonderful. This global university is spreading across the globe. It's not that we're necessarily so tall. It's the flatness of the surrounding landscape that makes us stand out so. As long as we do, I hope you'll keep on supporting us. If you enjoyed the show, please come back on Wednesday for the midweek mother of all talk shows and bring another viewer with you. Let's get each individual show up in the millions every week. It's very important to beat the algorithm and to provide a beacon of hope. Good night.